بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. نرحب بالإخوة الحضور هنا وفي عليشة. We welcome Dr. Albert Knows in King Saud University and with us here in the College of Education. Dr. Albert is Associate Professor of Science Education in University of Pittsburgh. Since 2003 to present as a chairperson for the Internal Review Board for Research Competence with Human Subject within the Department of Instruction and Learning. He is the director for NASA Educator Resource Center, a public information and teaching center for Earth and Space System education for the state of Pennsylvania, housed at the University of Pittsburgh. Also, he was associate editor for the Journal of Science Education, which is one of the most influential journal in science education. Also, he was the director of university, the director for Computer and Curriculum Inquiry Center in University of Pittsburgh. He have worked as also before that as a biology teacher for more than 9 years, I think. Dr. Knows will talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, as a new term called is an old trend. I'll give Dr. Knows the time for about 45 minutes. Then we can open the discussion and the questions. You can start now, Doctor.
Okay. I'm impressed your technology is better than ours. When I was asked what the purpose of meeting with you here today and the other members of the audience, the young women and the public, it's to talk more about what has happened in my life with the research at the University of Pittsburgh and how we've grown over the years from science and math education to the department as we now have it, and specifically as we're moving ahead in the use of technology. And I thought what I would do is to talk about the transitions that have occurred in our program. We're very much interested in program development. It has settled now, but in the early years of science and math education, we underwent a number of changes from the focus on science and math education to the new emerging technologies. If I had to describe how we came about, our learning in the early years, when I first came to Pittsburgh, I worked at the Learning Research and Development Center, and we were concerned about, does this work for you? Can you see the, we were looking at how learning occurred. At the Learning Research and Development Center, we were very much concerned about programmed instruction. That was the new technology then. That was the cutting edge technology. But in terms of rote learning, that was basically memorization and drill, and it was a focus on the content of science, the facts, the terms, the principles, the laws, the trends, the sequences. We wanted students to take exams and do well on the exams. And we measured their achievement using very simple descriptive statistics. But we found soon that there was the focus on learning began to diversify. We started out with a program called, I was the field coordinator for the IPI school, individually prescribed instruction. And in there, the model was simple. It simply said, as a student, you are there in the classroom, and we are here as the curriculum developers, and we will tell you what you need to know. Straightforward. You there, we're here, we tell you. It's much like when you go to the doctor's office. You're ill, you sit there, I examine you, I tell you what to do. Okay? So we had this very prescriptive model that went from memorization and rote learning to a developmental model where we started to think in constructivist terms, in the student as developing. It was no longer a student focused on getting it or not getting it. We realized that students began to develop, and we began to look at not only did the students develop physically, they developed emotionally, they developed intellectually. And we observed that the learning became mismatched. That the learning that went on in the classroom, we had our students having difficulty. And so, assuming this developmental model, we began to look at other behaviors and we began to focus on other dimensions of learning, not just content, but we began to focus on, as I discussed with the research group, we began to look at processes. We had Bloom's taxonomy, and we were looking at content and process, and we wanted to begin examining the higher order thinking skills. Now, we also said this morning, and I think we agreed, that with the TIMSS reports, many people take the reports and they'll say, what are the best countries? What are they doing? What they're doing is very well in these science areas which measure only one dimension of science learning, and that is content. Now, for learning content, if you are focused and you deliver it, say, through programmed instruction, which involves very little student activity, and you focus attention and drill and exercise and work and drill and exercise, that's a very efficient way to get content information across. And so what we wanted to do was to develop a program which would move then to more student-centered learning. Now, student-centered learning means there are some things. It's almost like raising our children. When we raise our children, we tend not to tell. We may say at certain times, I know with my children, you say, do this, do this, do this, and this. But I don't do it all the time. Many times I'll say to my student who's getting older, my son who's getting older, he'll say, Father, what do you think? Dad, what do you think about it? And so rather than be didactic, I turn it around. And I'll say, what's your objective? What are you trying to do? And he'll say, I'm trying to build a porch. I'll say, have you made a decision yet as to which wood to use? Are you using the plastic deck material, or are you going to use wood? And you say, I think I'm using the wood. Well, are you going to want to refinish the wood every 5 years? Or do you want to have something a bit more permanent? I involve him as a decision maker. What did we call that? Inquiry learning. We called it inquiry because you were there not so much as a teacher in the front, but you were a guide on the side. You worked alongside the student. And in a very easy, casual manner, you worked with these students to deal with hands-on learning. And for all of the science programs that we had, the model was, well, let's learn the content of science. But AAA Science came along and said, you must now look at the process skills. The process skills, observing, measuring, classifying, looking at relationships, analyzing, hypothesizing, all those process skills. So now you can see the trend. We're moving away from a very didactic approach on up this scale. I hate to say evolutionary scale, but there's a transition occurring in education from subject-centered to process-centered, from student with little involvement to student with a great deal of involvement. And then in the 50s and 60s, we became very much interested in the use of logical operations. Now, if you've ever read The Growth of Logical Thinking, sometimes many people will say, oh, that book is too old. It's too old. Well, sometimes certain wisdom is never old enough, you see. And Piaget, who developed the stage learning theories, many people focused on the learning theories, but then they forgot one thing that Piaget talked about, the use of schema and logical operations. So you could have logical operations going on, and then students would organize these operations into schema. And so that's how we became focused on schema theory, which works very well. Works very well. But not many people looked at logical operations. Nowadays, they're looking at these logical operations. We have researchers at the University of Pittsburgh in the computer science department that are looking at what we call logical operations, but they call apps on the phone. So that you take these small clusters of thinking, and many of you as teachers have found out that if something is too difficult for students to learn, you deconstruct it. You begin to pull away variables to make it less complicated. You begin to deconstruct the task so that you can move to earlier tasks. And if we call them logical operations, or in the terminology of e-learning, apps, you combine this app with this, there can be, and this is just a thought, there can be a schema of apps that one could use in the classroom. I know my own nephew. We used to talk about thinking a great deal. My cousin is married to Bernard and Philippe, and his brother has gone on to school. He graduated from Georgia Institute of Technology, and now he got his first job working at Google, writing apps. Google, that's fantastic. I wish I had those opportunities when I was a student. All they could say about me was, oh, you were a biology major. You did your work in radiation biology. You did your work in zoology. But now with the new learning that's coming along, which takes all of these things here, and we're now interested in developing instructional systems that focus on the system itself, design and development, the stories of success, where they begin and where they work well and where they don't work well, and then into the e-learning challenges. And that many of the instructional design group are here, and we're interested in looking at that as a basis for our programs. Now, these are the if I could call it anything else, these are the e-education experiences that we've had at Pitt. And the first, it was the University of Pittsburgh where we started the center, and I'll share information about that. Then the work we had with NASA and how we then developed our own e-learning site, or our own site for the University of Pittsburgh, our use of Blackboard as the instructional vehicle, which is now being replaced by Moodle. Moodle from Google. It's an open source instructor management system, which is supposed to give us much more flexibility than the closed source system, which is Blackboard. But I'll talk more about that later on. And then finally, in the later years, where I worked with the faculty in the School of Medicine and Nursing to see how they're dealing with content process skills and relevancy. In other words, making medicine work for the community, where you have to deal with people so that we can bring in these experiences. They're stories. They're my stories. Hopefully you will have your stories. And that's how learning proceeds. And I was impressed with the organization of the center in the sense that it focuses on research first. Research first. The areas that you have research in are continuing professional development and the curriculum and in the disciplines and physics learning and so on and so forth. They represent basically what your department is all about. And so you have, you want to construct an environment for, I would call it e-education, where there's a marriage between professors or professors and their research. And then what you'll do is to move and work out into the schools. So our problem was we were very didactic and we wanted to take science education and move it along. About 1984, we developed what we call our regional computer resource centers. Our objective was to first say to the administration, we want to have a showcase center where we can bring the newest technology and show the people how it is, how it works. There's some faculty that were never using computers until 1984. It was young. It intrigued us, it excited us about what we could do, knowing or feeling this sense about the effective use of computers. We excited, wanted to get into it, wanted to do it. Other people were saying, oh, I can do just as effective with the old way. I can lecture, I can sit there, I can give assignments, I can talk, and you know what happens in that particular setting. So we wanted to develop a regional computer resource center. And it took us time to develop what we call the coursework and the instructional staff, because not only did we have the center, we said now what we've got to do is to have the center. But if we just have the center with the machines there, we're not really allowing the teachers to grow. So we need to have them play with computers. So we said what we'll do, in addition to the center, we'll have a grants program. And we nested it in the schools, where the schools were responsible for writing grants, $25,000 grants to get equipment. But they had to have a plan. Why have a plan? because up to that point, many people were buying computers, and they would say, now we have the computers, what are we going to do with them? They start with acquiring the equipment, and then they worry about how they're going to use it. You don't build buildings that way. With buildings, you develop what we call environmental impact statements. You have a plan of what the characteristics are in the environment, and then you have your project plans as to what the size of the building is, what the acreage, how it's going to affect traffic flow. All those things are considered, and then when you're given approval, you build, you see. So that's the model we were using. You've got machines here, come in, see these machines at the center. Now, go back, develop a plan for ideas you have about how you want to use them, and then write it in the form of a grant, and you will get the money. And we found that the teachers in the schools took that on as an entrepreneurial task. They started to move along, they wrote the proposals, they started to take these things and make them work in the classroom. We were not interested in saying, come to us, we will show you how they work. We wanted to give them the opportunity to play. So we showcased the technology, we did the computers, and we said, now what's missing? Simple. What's missing is having the teachers get experience with the technology through coursework. So we had a three-pronged approach. Develop the resource center, develop the grants program, construct a faculty, much like what you have now, using technology and showing and giving the students their orientation to technology with the technology they bought with the grants. Some of the school districts began to say, well, we're not going to wait for the grant program because your money is finite. What we want to do is to develop it as quickly as possible. So the budgets began to change in the schools. They began to allocate more money for these computer, for the equipment and the software. What happened was we found that the software was first being used traditionally. It was like saying, well, we have resources traditionally used in the traditional classroom, okay? If I'm standing here and this is a videotape, they're videotaping here, what's the difference if we package up that videotape and send it out on CD disc? Is that electronic learning? No, it's a substitute using the new technology. It hasn't really added that much more. It adds perhaps portability because I can take now the CD discs and use them. It adds the ability to deal with asynchronous learning, so students can look at the video at their own pleasure, you see. But does that really promote the learning? So we wanted to move from the hands-on, or from the traditional learning to becoming familiar with the technology and to improve teacher training and to do all these things that would support an e-education environment. We found one outcome, and I've put these outcomes down here. And you are very unique here. The government supports you to a large extent. You have a large contribution, and that's by the government. And it's good not because it's money. If you go to some countries, they want the money. If you come to America, there's some people that want money for schools. And they become satisfied. They begin to lose their appreciation for working hard. Their attitudes begin to, they atrophy. For some reason, if you give someone too much over a long period of time, they're not going to worry about that. You see, they become apathetic. And so we don't want them to become apathetic. So we have to go for government and industry support. Now you have the industry support, you have a large portion of the government budget goes to that. And it's good because in the social sense, I was talking with a young man one time about a couple of months ago, and he was from Iran, and we started talking about Khomeini and in the movie Argo, Iranian. Yeah, we talked about the movie Argo. The idea being that sometimes government people don't want people to get technology education, because if you don't educate the people, what will happen is you can control them. If you begin to control the venues by which they get their information, and you hold them away from education, it increases an individual's control. But I noticed in Kuwait, and I notice here, that your leaders are generous, and they want everyone to learn. So in essence, if you have the government supporting education like you do, I say that's a blessing, but it also shows the openness that your society has. So there's a societal component to using the technology in the classroom. In the United States, we have to worry about industry and government support and company support. We need to get our money any way we can. And that's a hard thing to do, to be worried about the money all the time. But they don't do it out of ill will or anything like that. It's just that money's tight for many people. And so they want to get that support. In your case, I think you have the support. And you have the support. It's working in your favor. Here's what our centers look like. The building itself, this was our regional computer lab. You can see in the background over there the computers, and we focused on, we wanted to say it's not just a technology center, but we wanted to blend the technology with the curriculum. So we called it a computer and curriculum inquiry center. Remember we talked about hands-on learning? We wanted to get the idea across to people that computers and technology are not separate and apart from each other, but they are blended together. And you can see the different ways the teachers looked. Here's one teacher who repainted all her walls because she was doing the Voyage of the Mimi. She was studying about whaling and whaling practices and things like that. So they were very vibrant, inviting classrooms. I'm sure you recognize this individual here. We said, let's go further. We've got to go further. Let's now take these school buildings, let's get down to actually changing the curriculum. And so in this, the Society for Applied Learning Technology has this journal called Instruction Delivery Systems. And in it, we put an article, and we went to the business school. We went to the faculty who were teaching business. Now remember, Pittsburgh in the early years was steel country. Now, with the economy the way it was, it started to shift away from a steel city to a technology city. Biotechnology, engineering technology, chemical technology. And so what we did is we took the curriculum materials, and this is where we ourselves were growing. We wanted to imitate what was already in the textbook. So we took Microsoft Office as our platform, And we went through the business book where the students had to write letters, they had to conduct meetings, they had to analyze facts and what have you. We made the entire curriculum based with Microsoft Office, okay? And then we had the two student groups. One group received the book version, and one group took, we didn't use the book, we took it away from the students. We used this system here where the students would come in, and if they had to talk about management, and this was in the secondary school, the students had to come in, and you see they're not dressed with the t-shirts and the jeans and the headphones and what have you. They dressed very businesslike. The teacher was the president of the company, and he would have students interviewing other students. Then they would prepare receipts, they would prepare invoices. Everything that a business does, we were doing on the Macintosh computers. Now, Britain was having the same problem at the same time. They were concerned about the shift over from the coal and the industries and how they were going to deal with this change in the system, so to speak. So Prince Charles did come over and came to the classroom. We were quite honored that he would come over and look at the classroom. And when we compared the results of the two groups, the group in the e-learning, or not in the e-learning, but in the computerized classroom had higher achievement and less loss of attendance, and thank you. And so they had to take, and they just did better. They did better. They were actively involved. They met with the teacher. That was another vehicle that we used. So we said, well, there's some things associated with and we call that the Office of the Future. Office of the Future. In Kuwait, I saw a school of the future. We allowed the teachers to become entrepreneurs. And so they worked in these TAILS classrooms. The TAILS represented technology adapted learning environments. That was our way of making computer use in the schools work. But we did have our share of teachers who would say, I'm not going to use a computer, it's too hard. I'm getting close to retirement. I don't want to learn about that. I'm too old for that. I don't want any part of it. Okay, but if we talked about learning environments, we could say, well, there's technology that can make your life easier. We prioritized, and I know the question was asked this morning, what's your priority? In these learning environments, we made technology-based education the priority. Now it's changed. We've looked at the technology and we've become so interested in it now. We're saying, how can we go further with the new technology that's coming out? The very large-scale integration technology that takes everything. And now I can get 32 gigabytes on that little small chip, which fits in my cell phone. That gives me much more power than I had with the early computers. Now they use those early computers and this technology for games and simulations and Game Boys and some very, very good simulations. Now, there's some good and some bad in everything. You can't escape evil. And of course, there are some programs that curse and swear. They take God's name. They're not good for kids. So part of our training in these new environments, in these technology environments, is to develop the ability to be able to say, that's good for me, that's not good. And what's your advantage here? Islam education. Realizing the power and the strength of believing in God and praying to God and hopefully avoiding all of these things that are occurring out there in the world. So I would say if you have the Islamic learning component, which I believe you do in your schooling, that part of it deals with how do we connect the Quran with technology education. And so you can see all of what's going on. We lowered student microcomputer ratios in the classroom. We need to increase e-learning. And then we need to develop some of these mobile and computer-intensive learning environments. The outcome for us was saying, where's the best place to do technology education? In the universities? No, in the schools. We need to have this move in the schools, and we can do that with mobile learning. If I begin to look at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, they're the ones that are really using the sophisticated technology and even the e-learning experiences, but they have some growth also. Our first activity was to identify the different types of environments in the medical school. Some are based on clinical education, some are based on very formal education of knowledge of the sciences, knowledge of biochemistry, knowledge of pharmaceutical drugs, the content. And then they need to get out into the field, see these things actually working, the process skills. How do you diagnose? How do you take what a teacher's, or how do you carry students along in the medical rounds, or what have you? And they even pull me into that sometime. They say to me, well, if you're going to work with us, you've got to sit in on surgery. So I have to put on the gown, I have to go in. And I was joking with one group, this TV makes hospitals look like very serious places where everyone is always serious and there's always a crisis, always an emergency, and people are going crazy trying to deal with the seriousness of the situation. When in fact you go into these surgical suites, they're talking about, the doctors are working and he'll say to the nurse, did you go away with the children this weekend? Oh yes, we went away with the children and we went up to Massachusetts. Oh, how was it up there? Yeah. And they're doing things in a very quiet, calm, resolute way. So what we have to do now is to begin taking these old resources and actually involving these people in simulations. They do such things as internet-based studies. An area that they get into is imaging and visualization. That has become very, very big in the medical schools, and the best way to deal with it is using the technology. They have, what's interesting, they have a medical app which is used for emergency technicians. One of the things I did in Kuwait was, his dad worked at the University of Kuwait, but he was a fireman. And since I work with my own local government in talking about, handling emergencies, just as the medical school develops a medical app, why can't we develop apps for learning in the classroom? We could deal with statewide standards. We could tie into lesson background information. We could deal with the GPS location of children for safety reasons. We can get class directories to do the same old to use the same old tracking device for the students in the classroom. We can have quick call to call parents in case of emergencies or for help. And we can then also deal with continuing education. Medical school does it. Why can't we have these kinds of things in elementary schools? That would be a good project for students to get into. Then, of course, we have the NASA modules. If I were to look at the modules per se, and look at, say, the NASA website. Here's our media. Here you can begin to see what types of resources that they have. They now have e-books on there. They now have podcasts. They have all of these resources available, which are free and open access. When I would have students from outside of the United States say, can you send me these materials? We'd have to apologize and say, right now our mailing privileges don't allow us to mail outside the United States. But with the computer, it's opened up the world. And so what we do is we have now these things available. So I can get to now, to bring it down to the end, we need to do certain things. I think what you want to do is to take e-education experiences and now start bringing them over to what we call e-learning. It's important that you have an e-learning community. Okay. But these are recommendations, and I'd be and there are many, many thoughts that are available, and most of this can be done, answered through research. I think the important thing for me was we need basically education that comes just in time. It's called just-in-time training. The learning segments are going to be smaller and smaller, and you're going to have to call them up and have accessibility to implement them in teaching. But that's if you as a group get together and you start to talk about the technology, or why do we focus on STEM? Why do we bring in technology, the T in STEM? Why do we bring in the E in STEM? It's because long time ago we lost the ability to take what we learned and use it in everyday life. And so STEM is there for a reason. It helps us to get back to the notion of practicality. And, you know, basically teacher learning has roles that teacher plays. I'm not so concerned about competencies in the classroom anymore as I am about the roles that teachers play. You all perform different roles. You all have different competencies. So I see each of you as individuals, not as a group of professors. What are the trends? They're here. Develop mobile e-learning technology. That seems to be the first thing coming out of the chute, so to speak. That's the next thing in the queue. Conduct research into case studies, practices, tools, platforms, and smartphones. Develop courses and apps. Develop criteria for critical techniques in design, prototyping, and evaluating mobile applications. And then somewhere have a mobile interface designs. I can see a day coming when the library over here will have many applications available for people in the schools. And I think you want to do this for every group in the country, even your military, e-learning for the military. You want new advanced teaching technology or techniques for use with religious studies for the colleges and all of the institutions through the country. But that's going to come. If you put it in the hands of the teachers, it will come. And then, of course, the list goes on and on and on. And I apologize for putting them up like that. But basically, if you need any of the electronic files and the communications, you can just email me at this address here. So my life as a professor in science and math ed has changed tremendously than when I first came to the University of Pittsburgh in 1969. and it's the type of education that people such as Fahad and Tariq have encountered at the University of Pittsburgh, and many of you have experienced in other universities. But this requires a tremendous effort on your part, but the rewards will be many. Shukran. Thank you for your patience. Now, questions?
You can have a seat. Thanks, Dr. Albert. The time now for questions and comments. You can sit, Dr. Albert. And we can have a question here or a comment, then we can go to the ladies' side and take a question or a comment there. Dr. Saleh.
Well, first, thanks to Nas for your presentation and for coming to Saudi. Actually, when we're talking about right now, it's not just a question, it's something like an argument more than being a question. It's something raised during my discussion with my students in one of our master classes. What they are saying, and by the way, this is not necessary to be my own thought and not necessary to be away from this thought. I found that they say we don't see STEM education as science education initiative. Rather, it can be something like politician act more than being something else. Why they are saying that? They said if we are looking carefully to the STEM education, we will not find anything new. We will find all these things included in our research before, included in our experiences in teaching, included in our e-learning, and so on. And they said, when we go to Wikipedia, for example, we will find those who are interested in STEM education are the agencies in the US, for example, immigration and new jobs, human development, and something like that, talking about new jobs that not be covered in the US. So they are talking about new initiative to bring some people to the US. Based on that, the immigration agencies will prefer for anyone to come to the US to be in a specific field. If you just take a look to Wikipedia, you will find 4 agencies talking about the jobs that be on the top of their interest based on the STEM education. They will talk about specific fields in eco and something about designing flowers or something like that. So they said this is not science education, this is politician acts. I want to hear from you about your opinion about this argument.
When NASA does its missions and we distribute the information to the people, NASA will do its research. And so you could say, that's science. They can do things where they're measuring trajectories, and they'll say, that's mathematics. And they'll say, but what about the technology? Well, I can see where technology might be used to deliver science and math education, but technology in and of itself is not something to be studied. What I think students have to realize is that NASA found out very early that they have to have a way to publicize to the people that there are outcomes and applications, and that developing and studying these applications help us to appreciate. So it's basically an appreciation of what science and math and the fields of technology and the careers of engineers, what they bring. It's a way to say this is important. What are students most concerned about when they're at school? They're saying, give me the immediate skills I need to get a job. That's what they want. When they come out, they want a job. Now, unfortunately, there's some people that want jobs and they want to start at the executive level, and they fail to realize you have to start at the low end of the scale, and you work hard all your life, and you get up to an advanced level. But we have to appreciate what they bring. They forgot about that in the past. Science went from hands-on applications and it went to purely cognitive. So we have a department, the Department of Science Ed has changed, and Math Ed at the university, because we have faculty from LRDC coming over and saying science is nothing more than just a matter of studying and learning the mind. But can they go out and work in epidemiology? Can they study, vectors for diseases? Could they work in an agency such as the Center for Biosecurity? You see, if they have the strict science, they're only going to be people that have one capability. But if we start to have the applications, we begin to see the process skills, and we begin to see the relevancy of these things in everyday life. So the T and the E in education is an answer to a remedy for what we forgot for what the focus was in education. They need just-in-time training. When you go to a company and you take a job, just-in-time means you need to handle this task right now and you need to have some training, and you need it now. You need it just in time so you can do this job. And just-in-time training is used quite effectively in business. Why don't we use it in education for just-in-time? You see, it's more of an attitude development.
Yeah, thank you. We can have a question or a comment from the ladies. Dr. Nidal?
No, thank you. They don't have any question.
You can ask them if I bored them.
إذا في سؤال بالعربي ممكن نحاول نشوف. تفضل علي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد. أولا first things I say to Doctor, welcome in Saudi Arabia and your second country in our college education. And ask about the science and technology and engineering and methods. It's 4 words. We collected in one word. It's STEM. And we ask about the word education. The word education. Where is this word in this college?
In American education?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes in with the National Science Foundation uses the word all the time. They want us, the reason being is the government wants to have us think about all of these things and not just science education, because then they had science education, they had math education. Now if you have STEM education, they see it as a way to conveniently put it together. And that's nice. That's a political decision that's made. They make that decision so that it's easier to encompass all of the learning that might occur in math and science. It's a political decision. What I'm trying to convey here is that the acronym STEM is not there just because we have to take these 4 words and put them together. You see, we put them together for a specific purpose. Science is discovery. Math is exploration. Math is experimenting. Science is experimenting. Math might be representation. Now we're concerned about visualization. I want students to look at satellite maps and begin to take that information and begin using it to study biology. Location of certain vectors and diseases and things like that. So it's there for a purpose. And engineering is there because we've forgotten how to show students how these things that they're learning about, these basic process skills. Why do we study science and math? Well, we do it because we want them to learn the science, but then we want them to see how these things are going to make a difference in society. Because those who can do that will be the ones that will improve our society, you see. If someone's just does the science and math, that can be a technician. So they're a technician. But the Nobel laureates, the people that get their, I noticed in one building they had, there's 47 laureates associated with in the public relations building that you had, you know, that small room in the, you have a pride in these laureates being associated with King Saud University. And these people that are Nobel laureates are not just focused on science. Oh, I understand this, I understand that. Oh, yes, I can do math. They take it and they make a difference somewhere out there in the world. And that's the reason why we want students to do that. Not just because we have to combine 4 words together into a nice, neat little acronym. And that's what the government does. They see it as a convenient way to put all these disciplines together. But when they read the proposals, that's where we get into the 4 disciplines. And any research proposal should show how it ties in with society. So it's more than just convenience. It's really a way of thinking. We need to get back to have students not only get their hands on science, but they have to get back to seeing how science makes our life easier. Not easier, but better. It improves the quality of our life, you see.
At the end of this presentation, I want to say thank you to Dr. Nos, and thank you for your attendance to our presentation.
I say thank you to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have a gift for your memory to memorize the Excellence Research Center in the university. Dr. Fahad. تفضل. Okay.